Hi, and welcome to Something to Talk About. I'm Linda McNamee, and for the next hour, we're going to start slowly reintroducing ourselves to back to school mode, but not too quickly. But before we begin, I would like to thank the crew for this evening. We're kind of a skeleton crew this evening because everybody's still enjoying their last-minute vacations. Chris Flaherty, who is staff member extraordinaire, who makes sure that the whole station runs on Wednesday evenings, as well as launches us, because we're down a few crew members. But Liz Gillespie is coming in to save the day. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Chris. And definitely last but not least, as always, I want to thank my husband, Paul, for staying home for Daddy Date Night. Hopefully the kids are starting to wind down. Hopefully. We are live this evening, so if you'd like to give us a call and speak with our wonderful guest, whom you will meet momentarily, you can always call us at 781-270-9199, or any time of day or night, you can always email me at talk@bcattv.org. Now, all housekeeping aside, I would like to introduce my wonderful guest for this evening, who worked her magic and got me to volunteer, Paula Boermeester, who is on the board? President. Oh, you're president. Wow, that's impressive. President of the Burlington Education Foundation.
Yes.
I almost said educational, but that's not right.
That's correct.
So, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I was really excited to find out about all the fun things that you guys do. And tonight, hopefully, I will learn why you do all these fun things.
I hope
And
I can
not out
shed
of the
some light on that.
Goodness
then.
of your heart, which
Well,
I'm sure
that
you
too.
do. But before we get into what the BEF does, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, where you grew up,
Sure.
and how you came to this area, and how and why you decided to get involved in the educational umbrella, I guess.
Thank you. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yay.
So I have been a resident of Burlington all my life. So too has my
Excellent.
husband. So you might consider us townies.
Okay.
But
Now, did you
when-
meet in high school? Or you're like high school sweethearts or something?
Something like that.
Okay. Not to put you on the spot.
So when we decided to choose a place to live, we, created our check boxes and what was important to us.
Okay.
And every time we went to look somewhere else, we ended up coming back to Burlington.
Kind of does that, doesn't
we
it?
absolutely chose to stay and bring our two children up, Victoria and Donald, who have, all four of us have now gone through the Burlington public school system successfully. My daughter just graduated from Quinnipiac for nursing with a nursing degree.
Excellent.
And my son will be a junior at the University of Hartford. So
And
we
what's he
have
studying?
He is studying business.
Excellent. Should
Yes.
introduce him to my son.
Yes.
My 7, soon to be 8-year-old son wants to become a businessman.
Oh, he would
grows up.
enjoy speaking with him. He would. He's kind of entrepreneurial, so he's a good kid
Excellent.
to talk to. So about 14 years ago when the BEF got started,
Okay.
the original entrepreneur, I will call her, that started it and was looking for some help to start a fundraiser for the spring.
Okay.
And that's when I got involved and started to launch the road race, which has now become an annual
Okay.
event.
Excellent.
So over time and through, transitions and attrition, I took over the presidency.
Lucky
and
you.
Have been in place for a few years now.
Excellent.
And I guess when you have the support of your family, it makes it easier.
Definitely.
So my husband joined the ranks several years ago. So both of us are on the board amongst
Gee, dear, if you
several
want to
others.
see me, you might as well come to the meetings.
Something like that, right? So that's how we got involved, was really to launch the fundraising, and then we've stuck with it ever since.
Now, what was the fundraising initially used for? I mean, was there there's a really cool project, we want to fund this, how are we going to do it? Let's do a road race. Or is it, let's do a road race and raise money for, how did that work? Do you know?
Yes. So Anne recognized that there was a real need in school for additional funding. She was volunteering at school, just like
Okay.
we all do when our
Just like
kids
we
are
all do.
young, and in the classroom, and overheard multiple conversations about, well, if I could do this,
Okay.
or if we had funding to add this to the curriculum, simple things in some cases, but just not budgeted for at the time, or not thought about to be budgeted.
Okay.
And
Because the budget process is like far in advance, and
Sure,
you don't
it's-
always have that crystal ball to know what you're going to need in
Exactly.
2, 3, 5 years. Or
And a
whatever.
school system is no different than any corporation where, the
Right.
next need isn't always readily thought of,
Right.
a year before when you're setting budgets,
Exactly.
right? So she thought, how can we raise money that will help appropriate, those kind of programs that will really make a difference?
So it's not part of the school system,
Not at all.
and it's not like PTOs.
Not a PTO.
Okay.
The PTOs are very driven for their own particular school, whereas
Oh, okay.
the Education Foundation is across the entire Burlington public school system,
Oh,
including the pre-K all the way through high
wow.
school,
So it's
and
kind of like
in
an
every
as-needed basis.
school. Yes.
So,
yes.
This year it might be pre-K, next year it might be middle school, the year after that it might be back to the pre-K or...
Well, it all depends on what teachers are really thinking about,
Okay.
and how they want to really focus on enriching some part of the curriculum,
Okay.
or it depends sometimes on the needs of their classroom and the
Okay.
ideas that they have that might really make a difference in a way that a
Okay.
child learns, a way that we can fashion the curriculum or the actual lesson in the curriculum in a different way.
Oh,
It's no different than, when you can apply what you learn, it makes a big difference in your learning, right? So
Exactly.
a lot of the programs are about that, about
okay.
combining different methods and topics
Okay.
across the board that really help a kid, that everyone learns different, right?
Exactly.
So just bringing to light different curriculum in a different way
Neat.
that keeps us relevant and,
Okay.
go forward thinking.
Okay. Now, before we go into, the criteria and some of the programs that you have funded, I want to back up a little bit and cover more about, no, you are not part of the school system, no, you are not a PTO, but there's also the Burlington Educational Scholarship Foundation, or BCSF, and they do a lot of fundraising as well.
They do.
So, what's the difference between the two organizations? Can you just touch on that?
I'm
I know
glad
that
you asked, because
probably could be like a whole thing.
I know.
but
I'm glad you asked, because
it's like, well, who does
we're
adopt a
often,
class?
I know, we're often very confused with the organization, because I guess we both start with the B, right?
And you're all school related.
And they're long names, and we're school related, but we're not actually in the school.
Okay.
We're definitely separated from the PTOs, because
Okay.
everyone knows the PTOs based on your own school
Right.
awareness or experience. So the Scholarship Foundation is all about scholarships. The Education Foundation is all about grants. So scholarships,
Okay.
serve a purpose for advancing education for a particular student or adult.
Okay.
Grants are about enriching curriculum and putting money back into the school system
Okay.
to promote educational excellence.
Well, that makes sense. Now that you've explained it that way, scholarship fund and
Correct.
education fund.
Exactly.
Okay, well that's neat. So I was looking at your website for the BEF, and it had the catchphrase, the innovative enrichment curriculum. That sounds very impressive, but what does it actually mean?
It's a mouthful, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
So if we really
Those SAT words.
if we really pull apart each of the words. What we're trying to accomplish is finding creative ways to keep educators engaged as well as students engaged.
Okay.
You know, curriculum is handed down from the state level,
Right.
and sometimes it's, you know, there is absolute truth in understanding the basics. Everyone needs, you know, math, reading and writing, history. It is just the basics of how
Exactly.
we learn
Right.
and going forward. In addition to that, there is other curriculum that is specific to each
Okay.
grade level. And delivering that curriculum is what we're looking for to be innovative and enriching so that a student understands
Right.
or is engaged in a way that will help them learn
Well, you
and
know,
help them apply what they learn.
Okay.
Right.
Because you had mentioned, we had already talked about how each student is an individual. They have the individual learning styles, so how to adapt to that and get all inclusive. But then as you're speaking, I'm also thinking about some of my teachers. I did not grow up in Burlington. Let me just preface that. But I had some teachers that had my parents as students as
Yes.
well. So if they've been teaching this for, 20, 30 years, sometimes they're using the same notes and they're bored with it. So by introducing this opportunity to mix it up a little bit might re-engage some teachers too.
Absolutely. And you have to remember, applying for a grant and receiving a grant is absolutely an accolade for the teacher.
Yeah.
Right? So it demonstrates their incentive to go, to do more, to participate in education in a different way than others are.
Right.
And most of the programs, or many of the programs that we support, we are supporting a program that has sustainability. So they might
okay.
not just be introducing it for their classroom, but for every classroom in that grade.
And that's kind of like an
in
ego boost.
Burlington.
It's like, hey,
Absolutely.
look, I've done this for the entire town.
Right? It's no different in the corporate world where,
Right.
if you do the same job in and day out and don't introduce something new along the way, or your
Yeah.
company's going to introduce something new along the way, no different than the curriculum is decided upon for us, right? We need to keep it relevant and we need to keep it going forward.
So, not to put you on the spot, but as you're talking, I remember talking to Wendy Pavlicek, and they just recently, within the last 2-3 years, redid the science curriculum. Now, is that something that you played a role in, or was that dictated from the state? Do you know?
It's typically dictated from the state. We didn't play a
Okay.
role in that. However, we do support several grants for the Science Center, I'm
Okay.
happy to say.
Yay!
And they are,
Love the
in
Science
fact, the Science Center was one of the first recipients.
Oh, tell me about that.
I know. So, and one of the reasons why we launched the road race back then, because we needed to fund more money. So the Science Center has always been, it deserves great accolades
Oh, I
in
love it.
Burlington.
Yes.
It is recognized throughout Massachusetts and beyond for the programs that it supports and the method that it supports those programs. So it's amazing. They actually applied for a grant to purchase a portable planetarium.
Oh, I've seen that set up in
Okay.
the schools. I've never been in it, though.
So talk about bubbles.
Talk about bubbles.
It's
I
a
love
big
bubbles.
bubble.
It's a giant thing. It looks like an igloo almost.
giant igloo tent that blows up, and it is absolutely fascinating. So I can't ruin the secret for everyone because you have to experience it for yourself. But it is used as part of the curriculum for astronomy and astrology and a few other
They do
that
astrology?
I'm not. Well, I would call
Astronomy.
it that.
Okay.
Astronomy. And it's for elementary school grades. I
Okay.
believe it's kindergarten and second grade. It is used in the high school.
Oh,
So it is used across multiple grades for multiple different classes and programs.
okay.
It was the most expensive grant that we've allotted to date. I believe, if I remember correctly, 14 years ago, it was about $20,000.
Wow.
So it has lived its time. It's used every year.
Okay.
So it's a great.
Okay, why are we hearing music right now? Can you turn that off, please? Thank you.
So it's a great representation of the type of grant that we support because it has sustained itself.
Oh,
It
okay.
has been used in many different ways
Oh,
across
yeah.
many different grades, and it's still living and breathing
Yay!
and sustainable. So
However, after 14 years, it probably needs a little facelift.
it does. It does. In fact, they are working on appropriating some funding to upgrading some of the equipment. So, you know, just like...
Which is one of my questions, that since they originally came to the BEF for funding, could they come back to you for the same project because it's been 14 years? Is there like a time limit or a time constraint? Or are they...
No time limits.
Okay.
What we do try to limit is, or what we look for in grants is repeatability.
Okay.
So we feel that we're the seed money of innovation within the curriculum.
Okay.
And if a program is known to work and is sustainable and is being adopted for, you know, in the school system, we feel that that then becomes the responsibility of the school system.
Okay.
However, you know, there are many ways around, not around it, but to also...
Many ways of looking at it.
Yeah, looking at it, to actually contribute additional funding that might contribute to the advancement of the equipment used or another use of the planetarium. So there are many ways to look at our funding, but what we're looking to see is that when programs are thriving and are successful, why shouldn't they be adopted?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And they have become adopted as practice, and then of course the funding is necessary.
Okay.
It's no different than replacing textbooks, I suppose.
Okay.
If you look at it that way.
Because, where is it? Somewhere in here. It said, I can't even find that right now. Anyway, but it was like first time only. You know, you would start it. You are the seed money. Now, could you point that grant recipient in directions of where they might be able to find continued funding should it be successful? It's like, yeah, it could be the town, it could be the school system, or it could be, you know, this other foundation likes
absolutely
forming stuff.
And we have actually made those suggestions many times. In fact, sometimes depending on the cycle and the amount requested and what the grant is supposed to accomplish, we very often will fund portions of what's requested and make recommendations. In many cases, the PTOs are very generous and support some of the school requests, as well as some of the other organizations in Burlington. We've, you know, worked together with other town organizations, the rec department, other PTOs, other corporations, and very often we're also in tune with other grant programs that they could very well apply for. So we're always looking for those opportunities as well and sharing that information.
Neat. Now, how many grants do you provide each year? Is it, just throwing out numbers here. We have $10,000. We can finance one $10,000 project or two $5,000 projects. How does that work?
Very good question. So we do have a volunteer organization, and as part of the board, we have one member that sits on the board that then directs the grant committee. And that serves as a bridge between the board and the grant committee, so that the grant committee operates under our guidelines. The grant committee,
is the grant committee part of the BEF?
It is.
Well?
Yes. We keep it as a private organization so that there's no chance of being subjective, or we try to keep it as objective as possible. It's a great...
Sometimes that's really hard to do.
It is, absolutely. It's a great group of men and women from Burlington that are across, multiple different industries, different careers, or whether they have students or not. Some of them are retired teachers or teachers in other communities.
So you kind of need that diverse
We try
basis,
to keep it diverse. That's
so you're
right.
not always leaning toward, so you get that objectivity.
Right. So we have some balance for most of our grants. So they operate as a separate entity. We appropriate the funding. We give them a budget for the year. And then we never know what grants we're going to receive. So it's hard to say. Exactly. It's hard to kind of target all of that. But they have their guidelines to abide by. And in September, if they were to get like the world's best grant, that was, that was our limit, they very well might fund that grant for the total amount. Or they might think, well, we don't want to shortchange anyone else that's coming along.
But there's this other one.
Maybe we could appropriate some funding and then and wait for the others to come along. And sometimes the grants are requested, but the funding isn't necessary for several months, right? So they're teachers are thinking ahead. It might be a program that they're applying for in the fall that might be something that comes to fruition in the spring. So there's a lot of leeway with our budget and how we appropriate it. And we try to be very fair and honest and upfront with everyone. And for the most part, I would say more than 80% of what we receive is actually funded.
Wow, that's really excellent.
Yes.
Now, how would somebody go about applying for, are there guidelines on your website?
Yeah, the website is a great, and is the only way actually to apply for a grant. And we communicate that to all of the educational staff in Burlington through the school superintendent's email distribution. We make sure that they understand we have a rolling grant cycle, which is which keeps everyone, as soon as they have the thought and can provide the information in a grant guidelines for our grant guidelines and application that is sent in. It's reviewed by our grant committee on a rolling basis, and most are replied by within a week to 2 weeks.
Wow, because I was wondering how often your grant committee meets. Do they meet on an as-needed basis, or?
We've definitely taken advantage of being digital.
Oh yeah, that helps.
And enlisting the help of conference calls and Google Docs and all of that, so that we can facilitate that in a very easy way.
Got it. So you don't necessarily have to physically meet. It's hey, let's teleconference.
And they do very often, but they are usually by phone now more often, so we can accommodate everyone's schedule.
Neat. So let's talk about we talked about the Planetarium already. What are some of the other of your maybe more favorite? That's not even a word, but some of your favorites. Favorite projects that have been funded.
So there's way too many actually, I think, but I will talk about a couple because there are a few that I think are very worthwhile and representative of the type of grant that we really like to be participating in. So one of our initial grants very early on outside of the Planetarium was a request for a robotic kit. So it was,
I'm intrigued.
It was the high school's after-school robotic program run by a math teacher here at the time. And he wanted to help these guys. They were just getting off the ground, essentially, and wanted to build. There's a whole industry of robotics and in the high school arena that allows them to actually compete against each other.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So a whole culture of robotics,
Okay.
I should say. And the seed money was barely $500 or $800, somewhere in that amount. It was literally a kit of parts, and they had to build a robot and code it to actually move.
Okay.
And then their goal was to be able to do that the first year and legitimately compete.
Oh, wow.
Within the first 2 years, they were competing internationally.
Wow.
So they not only took our seed money and created this robot, but then went on to compete. They did request again, and we allotted that money because it was the next advanced level, and they had demonstrated already that they were more than successful in competition. And it was a natural succession of the kit that we first supplied.
Okay.
They today operate as a corporation at the high school with the...
Is this like the robotics club?
Yes, with several other clubs that are responsible for raising their own funding, marketing their own teams, and they run the whole gamut of acting like a corporation.
That is so cool.
And have absolutely, they've been on road trips to compete, internationally to compete. It's amazing what they've done. Absolutely amazing.
And it's all from this $800 kit.
Yep.
Wow.
So, and there are, early on when
was that a student that came to you?
It was a math teacher.
A math teacher, okay.
But actually mentioning students, some of my most favorite grants are actually student-written grants that are supported or authorized by a teacher. And we have had quite a few of those in the last couple years, which is absolutely amazing. So the way that the high school and middle school operate now with their own teams for the help desk, for the computers and iPads, there's a lot of opportunity for different ways to do things. And students have actually come forward to request grants that the teacher then submits to us because it has to be submitted by an educator. And they work hand in hand together to develop those programs and bring them to fruition. So there was, supported by the Science Center and the help desk, what is it called? A sandbox that is like a 3D infrared sandbox.
Oh, wow.
That's used here, or actually out of the Science Center. I don't know, I forget what grades it covers. Wow. Absolutely amazing.
I haven't gotten to middle school yet. My kids are still in elementary. Wow,
there's lots of good elementary programs too. I'll mention one because this is a good one. The ukulele program that we just supported in the last year or two started at Francis Wyman as part of the Burlington music program to introduce ukuleles to the 5th grade.
Yeah, I was like, that just doesn't seem like a real common instrument to pick up and learn.
It isn't, but it's actually known to be the best instrument for learning because it is simple to hold, much easier to learn than a violin. Yeah. Easier than a guitar, way more fun than a recorder. And
parents can tolerate it probably better than a recorder.
A list that goes on and on about its benefits in learning music and music theory. And the music teachers at Francis Wyman submitted this grant. It went into full program as soon as the ukuleles were received. And the 5th graders this year actually performed at their own ceremony for their transition to middle school. Additionally, the middle school teachers, which we don't typically support the program outside of once, right? So because it was the music department, we expect that given the success of this program, ukuleles will likely be at every fifth grade, or should be at every fifth grade.
Okay.
But the transition then to middle school leaves you with nothing. So the music program at the middle school requested the same, and honestly, the ukulele cost for the worth of the program is minimal compared to the benefits, right? So we felt that it was a great transitional program to have, because now it can be further supported in the middle school and advanced in the middle school. With simple seed money for that program.
Okay. And now once it's
in there, and that's continuing.
It can be taken over by the music department. And
yes.
Neat. Wow. Who knew?
I know. So that's the hard part, right? Who knew? Okay. Because unless you have a student that's actually taking advantage of some of these programs, or you've been introduced to the BEF and understand it, you might not know. So it's important for us to be on programs like this, just so that there's some awareness that there is real great community support for education in Burlington, and we're really trying to promote that and have the school system take advantage of the community and vice versa, right? So, education is such an intricate part of our communities, and the public school system is so important.
Oh, yeah.
And when education and the public schools thrive, the community thrives, and communities thrive from those that they're exposed to in school systems, Well, so
like
it's great.
Teaching the next generation how to be a responsible generation and an enlightened generation. Now, those were really cool programs, and I'd love to hear more. However, what about the flip side? Have there in your tenure ever been a program that didn't quite work out the way it was planned?
So there have been a few grants, and of course, we all learn as we go. I still believe that the BEF is somewhat in its infancy of where it could be, but we're maturing as we go.
Baby steps.
Absolutely, are good. And we're not all professionals in grant writing, grant committees, or fundraising. So, but we look to be very judicial in what we try to support. And teachers are very, very honest about what they want to do and how they want to do it. And there have been a couple things that have been requested that fizzled before they came to fruition. In some cases, what they looked for, the grant money for, goes out of business. Or, we had the gym teachers, the elementary school gym teachers, wrote a fantastic grant about a program that would have been supported by particular software or tools that we were to purchase. And that program never came to be because it actually was adopted by a different tool or software that happened. So they no longer needed that. Right? So
something bigger and better came along.
Exactly.
Or it was already there.
Right. But we're in constant contact with those that are grant recipients because we have to appropriate the funds. And that was, at one point it was questionable. They weren't sure how it was going to come to fruition. It never did. We never appropriated the funds. We never purchased the software. So, some things sizzle, I guess. And, there's teachers are introduced to, what's out there that's new and fast and growing. And sometimes those things sizzle. So they don't always come to fruition. But I don't think that, I can't say that we've ever appropriated funding that we're not proud of. We could probably look back and say, oh, too bad that didn't have a more sustainable path. We've supported a few performances that are absolutely wonderful, incredibly relevant at the time, but it's once and done. Right? Whereas we would love to see things happen more often or be able to carry through from year to year.
Now, as you were talking, and I'm thinking about whether a program is successful or not, because it is grant funded, is there a reporting process that recipients have to complete at the end of whatever period that is, whether it's a year, or to let you guys know, hey, this was a success, or it was successful, but we could have done better, or this was a huge success, like the robotic example that you gave me.
Exactly. So we're very fortunate. We are very much in contact with both Dr. Conti and Mr. Larkin. And Mr. Larkin is typically on a mission to make sure that he understands what grants have been awarded and will visit with those classrooms and teachers and record some of that as well. We request for every grant recipient to provide some feedback to us, that the grant is done or is in place. And now with all of our media and social media, many of them have their own blogs, send us photos. We receive packages of thank you notes on occasion from students. And we do also receive a lot of good feedback from the grant recipients themselves. And we like to post as much as we can on our website. So you'll often see on our grants page links to their own feedback and their own classrooms about their grant.
Fun.
Yes. Yeah, it's very rewarding.
I love happy endings. That's really cool. So there's something on your website called a STAR Award. Tell me more about the STAR Awards. What are they? What do they represent? And is that money raised in that particular avenue earmarked for a specific thing, or is it just thrown in the whole grant?
Today it's part of our general funding, but it is a tremendously successful program, particularly over the last few years, and it's the simplest form of acknowledgement. For a student, a teacher, a community member. It's a thank you. It's a, great job, good job. And it's just our way of keeping our name out there. We award a certificate, a framed certificate to the recipient.
Now, does STAR stand for something?
STAR is Student Teacher Appreciation Reward.
Oh, okay.
And the star happens to be part of our logo.
That's right, because it's got like the ribbon around it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So it just started as like a very simple program. It's blossomed into quite an effort. And in fact, we're actually looking for school liaisons. Particularly at the elementary school level, but at each of the public schools, that would require producing these STAR Awards and delivering them. And the principals actually have all been involved, and they like to award the certificates to the teachers or the students.
Cool.
So it's usually kind of a big deal, and especially at the elementary school level, to be a STAR recipient.
Cool.
So many teachers have them hanging in their classrooms, and it's really nice.
Now, is it always like a kid's current teacher, or could they say, okay, I've completed 5th grade, but my 1st grade teacher meant so much to me. I want to.
So that's funny that you say that, because
do you track stuff like that even?
At the end of the year, we typically get more, but this year we got them from older students that had teachers in the high school, whether a current teacher or a past teacher through their 4 years of high school. So very similar to that. But typically it's, a lot of times it's the parents acknowledging their own student or a teacher in their students' lives.
Got it.
But very often a student recognizing a teacher.
Okay. Well, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Actually, this year we even had teachers recognizing teachers, which
really
is awesome. Yeah.
That is pretty cool.
It is.
Wow. So the BEF is volunteer run.
Yes.
correct? Or did you have anything else to say about the Star Awards? Because I think they're really cool. Is it just the end of the year that they're awarded?
No, you can take a Star Award anytime during the year. We're
okay.
happy to produce them and present them.
Okay.
So we do get, it's a big run, at the holiday time, and it's a big run at the end of year.
Yep.
But we are absolutely happy to, do them all through the year.
Excellent. So you mentioned the liaison.
Yes.
At all the schools. Is
Yes.
that like a volunteer position that you're hoping to fill?
It is. And, we're pretty confident that it'll only be like maybe an hour or two per month for the entire school year. And what we're looking for is, it's hard to keep track of all the current events and the relevant events that are happening at the schools. It's a nice way to hear back on what grants have been awarded,
Okay.
if they've seen them in action. And it's being the eyes and ears of the BEF and the face of the BEF at
Okay.
each school. So it's somewhat no different than, being part of the PTO in a way.
Okay.
And all we're looking for is, a parent or co-parents that, if you're going to be at the school system anyways, picking up your kid, you might drop off the Star Awards. You might, find out a teacher has a question about the grant system or the grant guidelines, and can put them in touch with the grant committee chair. It's that type of thing. And of course, we have plenty of events and that are going on that we might need an extra hand, or want to get that out in public at the school.
Okay. So I'm wondering what other, great segue, what other opportunities other than liaison would someone have to volunteer for the BEF?
So we always have event volunteer opportunities, because there's so many that might not be able to make a commitment for a more permanent position, but the events that we have, we look for volunteers, just as you did for us very graciously in helping give out water at the Color Run, which is a great event for us.
And my kids had fun with the extra color packets
the run. I'm sure. I hope they didn't ruin your car too with all the color. But that's a great benefit for
chalk
us.
Dust. It's not permanent, so it's okay.
It is chalk dust. That's right. The other events that we have are the road race and the trivia night.
Okay.
And the road race, we rely on close to 70 volunteers day of. But if you want to help plan an event with us, we look for our committee members. Our events are very concentrated, and we try to be very respectful of the time allotted to plan. So we try to create tasks that are manageable.
Okay.
And we try to limit our meetings and our meeting times so that we're not spending thousands of hours
overhead.
Right.
Okay.
And our events have been in place for quite some time. They're pretty well oiled, and they run.
So you don't really have to reinvent the wheel. It's like, for this event we need this, this, and this.
Yeah, and we try to keep, we try to introduce new things along the way so that we keep the event relevant and running well. We always have post meetings, to make sure if we've made any mistakes or if we could improve in any way. But we do have board positions open. And
what are the qualifications to be a board member? Just interest in education, or?
That plays a big, big part of it. And I think every single one of our members is absolutely is more than respectful and more than passionate about education, and seeing us sustain our ability to fundraise and keep the BEF going and the funding going for the grants. So I think absolutely a passion for education, energy about, being able to have new ideas, raise money. We try to focus our yearly tasks on, one or two accomplishments that we know that we can manage and be successful. And then work on, getting the right people involved in the subcommittee so that the events run well. And always having that one additional goal of, what does our future hold, right? And how do we get there?
Exactly.
So this year, our focus is absolutely on volunteerism.
Okay.
We really, really would love to see liaisons come forward and help us with that. It helps us keep in touch
Now,
with
is this
each
like a
of the
one-year
schools.
commitment, or is it
Every position we have, we like to have a 2-year commitment,
2-year
just
commitment?
so
Okay.
that we have some continuum and the ability to bring somebody up, from
okay.
the, and hope. And in many cases, like liaisons could be co-liaisons,
Okay, that's true.
and buddy up. A lot. The PTOs are very successful in doing that and co-chairing,
Okay.
and it makes sense for us to do it as
Yeah, why
well.
not?
And the tasks are not so daunting that you couldn't handle it by yourself, but having a buddy might, help manage the time element or the task at hand.
Make it more fun.
Or also, help
It's always
with the
fun to go to the
continuum.
Fun to go to the gym with a friend, so
Absolutely.
let's
No different, right?
go to the school with a friend.
No different. And also, we're looking at positions that will help us, make sure we're being relevant and keeping up
Okay.
to date. So, we like new faces, new energy is really important.
Okay. Now, before the show, we were talking about one of the grant-funded events that you did. It was a single stand. It was the screenagers.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Yes, good question, and I'm glad you brought it
So
up.
tell me,
So,
what's going on that realm?
yes,
Is it like every year you try doing a presentation? Oh,
we are.
just
We are.
talk.
It's perfect. No, that's perfect segue. We have been hunting for an event for the fall because when you deal with anything school, you want to be out there when school starts,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
So we thought, and most of our event fundraising is in the spring.
Okay.
So it made no sense to introduce something else in the spring, and it made perfect sense to introduce something in the fall.
Okay.
We tried a few different things that were not as successful, and we knew that they were not sustainable. And we kept thinking of, what really speaks about the BEF and what
Okay.
really will help us in our mission. And our mission is really to have community support and channel community funding to school curriculum excellence, right?
Okay.
So how can we pair all that and really make a difference in the community?
Yeah.
So
So tell me, Paula, how do you do that?
seriously, so 2 of our board members, Ellen and Chris, came up with this fabulous idea to introduce kind of like a community talk night. And
okay.
we introduced what we consider education in action. And it's our way of educating the public. So we are trying to introduce relevant topics that are interesting to, adults or parents or both, depending, right? So last year we started with a program called, with a movie documentary called Screenagers about, how much time is good time or enough time.
Debate. Is there really an answer for that?
For a child with all of the screens that we have access to. Phones and iPads and computers and TV and all the others
And if
combined.
a lot of the schools now require the students to work on a screen
Yes.
for work, so what does that leave for, downtime?
Yeah, and I likened it to, it was probably no different than we were kids and, how much phone time was too much phone time, right? But we're in a different world and there's different relevant topics to be discussed. We had an overwhelming response.
Excellent.
More than 150 parents showed
Wow.
up. We had a wonderful professional panel of to answer questions, take questions from the audience. We watched the documentary. It was very well done. And in response to the feedback that we received from that night, we're introducing a new program this year about safety and internet safety,
that's a big one.
cyberbullying, sexting.
That's a big one.
So this is what's great about this program is that it is a combination of multiple different entities. So we have a collaborative effort with the U.S. Attorney's Office,
Wow.
Homeland Security Investigations, the Burlington Police Department resource officer,
Okay.
and the Burlington School Department all working together to
Cool.
be part of the presentation and the question and answers from the audience. So we're having that event in October.
Okay.
It will be at Marshall Simons, which is where we hosted last time.
Okay.
And
Now, is it a video component or is it just like a panel discussion, Q&A?
I believe it's all of a panel discussion
Okay.
this time and Q&A. What's really important about this particular program is not just the breadth of topic and the importance and relevance of the topic. It's really about the collaboration and also the inclusion of the students. So there will be a student program as well during the
Okay.
day, during school hours.
Okay,
for
got it. So
fifth-
not simultaneous. Kids
Yes.
don't come to this.
Correct. So this will be the adult
Okay.
version at night, or
Okay.
the adult, for the adult population at night. But during the day, every 5th through 12th grade student will be introduced to this
Wow.
presentation. So we're very, very happy to do that and bring that to them.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great night and very interesting. I think it's relevant across the board, whether you're
Yeah.
a student or an adult.
I'm also curious how you got like the Attorney General's office and Homeland Security involved. And
So it's an organization called Project Safe Childhood that we were introduced to. Ellen is one of our board members and found out about this topic through some research because we were ready to launch another program, and did her due diligence along with Chris and really did a great job of bringing this to Burlington.
wow.
Very exciting. Yeah.
Excellent.
I think it'll be a great night.
Cool. So we have a few minutes left. How would we talked about volunteering. How would somebody become a sponsor and what would the sponsor roles be? Because, Burlington's business is booming right now.
I know, we're very lucky, very, very lucky.
How do we get some of those new businesses involved in this?
So we definitely do our due diligence, and we try to reach as many new businesses as well as existing businesses as we can every year to ask for funding. We look for donations anywhere from our membership donations of $20 a year for individuals to corporate donations of $250 and upwards. We are very, very lucky. I actually have a road race T-shirt for you.
Wow.
That represents not just the road race, but all of our sponsors.
Oh, wow.
And this happens to be a challenge every year to add new
Yeah.
ones because there's so many, and
Okay.
everyone always says, "How do you fit them all?"
Smaller
you
font
know what?
size.
What's important is
Bigger
that
T-shirts.
I know everyone's going to get an extra large. It's really, really important that our sponsors are recognized, and this is
Yeah.
part of the recognition.
Okay.
We introduce them at every event that we have.
Okay.
On our websites, they are flashing on our homepage. They have links to their own websites.
Okay.
And one of the greatest benefits is, the way that we're able to communicate with our community. Being involved with the school system, we're reaching 3,000, 4,000 families
Wow.
easily with just being able to work through the school system.
Oh, okay.
So, for many of our businesses that rely on that clientele,
Exactly.
it's a great way for them to not only promote themselves, but promote that, they are community sponsors, that they're willing to put their best foot forward for education in Burlington. So we do a lot by email.
Okay.
We participate in the Burlington Chamber of Commerce as well.
Okay.
And we try to keep it, which helps us to keep up to date with what's coming up, that, who's
Okay.
new, who's out there. And I have to tell you, they do a wonderful job of, allowing nonprofits to be part of the organization and introduced to all of these wonderful organizations. Many organizations fund us in the way of volunteer hours.
Okay. I was
And
wondering, like,
many, many
in-kind
more
contributions.
are financial contributions. And, obviously that's what we're looking
But
for.
I'm wondering, maybe a printing company could sponsor and going to pay for all your printing or something.
And, you know, or just knowing another reputable company that we can rely on is key. So, we do a lot of work with a lot of organizations, and there are so many that are so very generous.
Excellent.
And want to help in any way they can.
Wow.
So those dollars are important.
We are almost out of time, so I want to remind everybody of the cyber safety panel discussion coming up.
October 17th.
October 17th, okay.
From 7 to 8:30 at Marshall Simons.
Okay, and that information is on your website.
Yes, it will be.
And what are some of the other events coming up? Do you know when the trivia night is?
The trivia night is the first Friday in March.
Okay.
And the road race is the third Sunday in May.
Okay. Are you doing the color run again?
The color run hopefully will be selected as their nonprofit as well, and that is typically in June at the Burlington Mall.
Okay, that's right. So that's not your necessarily organized.
Right.
Okay,
right.
Then I probably shouldn't have mentioned that.
No, that's okay. That's good.
Well, we are just about out of time.
Well, then
so
let me present you with your
I get
T-shirt.
to wear my
I know.
Burlington
and
red.
Can I add quickly?
Oh, absolutely.
That our logos are always designed by the graphic arts department at the high school by students.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So
and
this
that has been a running.
It looks like the little pie symbol underneath.
Yeah. So we give them very few guidelines other than, we need it in 2 colors, and it's a road race, and we want it to, be fun, and we always get some great designs, and then we select as a board. Is there like an election
process or something?
Yeah, so we've done it all different ways. We've had the students select themselves. We've done it as a board. We've done it at one of our events one time. We switch it up every year.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having
me. I really
me.
enjoyed learning more about the BEF.
Thank you.
And all the different organizations, all the different activities you fund. Now, real quickly, though, is there a list of grant recipients on your website?
There is. I don't know that we have the complete list of 14 years, but the Grants in Action page are the most current. And recipients, yeah.
Cool. Well, I do want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank everyone at home for tuning in this evening. I hope you found our conversation as interesting and enlightening and hopeful for the future generation as I have. So thank you very much for tuning in. I will see you around town. Good night.